This is my side fence and I've never really been happy with it. Firstly, the ground sort of slopes away artificially to the fence, and then there's a 1.8 metre fence, but the ground the other side is still quite high, making this fence quite low, and if you come back you can see over it really easily. Secondly, I've had the calls to repair at least 3 of the fence posts because the so-called professionals put them in so badly. So the job today is to build a fence in front of this one with the posts staggered in between these ones, essentially putting up a new fence to the right height. But that's not what the video is about. While I'm doing that, I'm going to take the opportunity to build a green wall or live-in wall in one fence panel here, an 8-foot fence panel between these posts. So I've already cleared the ground. I need to concrete some posts in, then I'll show you how I'm going to build it. Working in this area I've been putting off for some time now, so time to bite the bullet and get on with it. I firstly removed the plants and barrels that I just put there just a couple of weeks ago, and some stored treated fence posts that I bought a couple of months ago for this project. I'm going to build a fence along the same line as the existing without removing it, but the new fence will be taller, and I'll also take the opportunity to remove the leaning uneven posts, which is what I've got at the moment. The existing posts have been put in at 8-foot centres, so the new posts are put exactly midway between these, which means for the green wall I can use one of the existing posts as the centre post, although it's currently too low and also out of alignment. For digging post holes, I find that these 2 simple traditional tools of a post hole digger and a long, thin post hole spade works really well and means I can dig even deep holes without ever having to get on my hands and knees to try to clear them out. The posts I'm using are 2.7 metres long with around about 2 metres out of the ground, so I'm digging around 700 deep. Going this deep means that you do create quite a lot of spoil, so you need to have a plan of where to put it before you start. Here I'm creating a new flower bed, so I just have to move it across the garden and I've got somewhere permanent to put it. Time to mix some concrete to concrete in the posts. And I don't have any problem fitting this wheelbarrow underneath this mixer. Carpenters. Every time I show myself mixing concrete for posts, I get a number of comments telling me all about postcrete. With postcrete twice as expensive as mixing your own, that means it costs around an extra £8 per hole just to use it. I have 10 holes to fill on this project, so using postcrete would cost me an extra £80. But if you want to do it that way, it's up to you. With my 4 new green wall posts in place, I now have to modify the centre post, which is obviously too short and is also leaning back as well. I found a post offcut that I cut for my rear fence recently, so I plan to use this to add height and to straighten things up. My cheap Ferrex bandsaw is the perfect tool to use to cut this post, and since I've changed the blade and readjusted it, it's been cutting really well. No £2,000 bandsaw here. As well as this top piece, I glue and screw plants to the full length at the front face with a taper that goes from 30mm at the top to 15 at the bottom, which essentially straightens up the front face of my old post. create the pockets of soil that the plants will grow in, I'll be using weed control fabric hung onto these battens. These are 1 by 2 treated roof battens that come in 4.8 metre lengths, which I cut in half at the timber yard just to be able to get them in the car. I start at the top, as this is my reference point, and make sure the first one is straight and level. Then using a spacer, this is what a spacer looks like, fit the rest parallel to the first. I'm putting these in at 200mm or 8-inch centres, and I just use a spare batten clamped vertically here on the right hand side just to help line everything up and make things easy.
Just a little tip, if you're doing decking or fencing like this, to have one of these magnetic wristbands where you always know where your screws are, definitely comes in handy.
I painted the new battens, and at this point I also did a bit of work on the adjacent fencing that I had to do and installed a timber gravel board. You can see here how the ground slopes rapidly down to the fence, which is something I'll be sorting out in the next few weeks and bringing the levels up near to the bottom of this board.
So that's all the timber work complete, and I've ended up painting all of it. I was actually just going to paint the bits you could see, but I thought for protection and just durability I've ended up just painting the whole lot with that bitumen type paint. And now I'm going to use garden weed control fabric. This is a heavy duty stuff to create pockets of soil so I can plant into. I'm actually going to double it up because I found out from experience when I used the pallet planter how quickly water drains from this. So I'm going to double it up, which means the water's going to drain a little bit slower and it gives it extra strength as well. Now to put this on, I'm going to be obviously using my cordless stapler as usual, but I'm actually using stainless steel staples. These are the tack-wise 10mm ones, just because this is going to be wet and damp forever. I thought I'd use something stainless steel just so it doesn't collapse.
This is 1 metre wide fabric, which obviously goes down to ½ metre once I've folded it, which is exactly the gap I've got between the posts, with maybe ½ an inch to spare, just right. To help create the pockets, I find an old piece of plastic downpipe that I cut to the right length to help persuade the fabric to form the pocket shape. With this in what looks to be the right position, I staple the fabric onto the top of the batten and move on to the next one.
So that's the first one out of 4 complete, and it went on fairly nicely actually. I just hope that I'm leaving enough room in these pockets for the soil. It's a little bit of suck it and see and trial and error. The only problem that I have got is either side of these pockets there's a little bit of a gap depending on how the soil sits in them, and I'm a little bit worried that in time the water will erode the compost and it'll just fall out of those side bits. But I've got a solution. I'll just use some of this fabric before I do this between these posts and at the back, just so it's got nowhere to fall out. This stapler I can get into really small gaps in the frame and has always worked really well for me, and I never find I can't use it because I've run out of battery charge. Shame I can't say the same about the staples. With a bit of pushing and pulling, I managed to fit the additional sheet behind the pockets on the first line before completing the rest. So that's just about full of compost. I don't really want to overfill it because each plant's going to come with a little bit of its own material anyway, so I'll probably be pulling some out. Now comes the fun part, which is actually putting some plants in. And I've been growing plants from seed for this very project since February, and I've worked out that I need maybe 100 to 120 with 3 per panel. So hopefully I've got enough. Not quite all of these plants I've grown from seed. The ones I haven't, I've actually propagated. All the ivy has just come from 3 plants I had last year. And also the grasses and the sedums, I've just split and propagated multiple times since I bought them early in the spring.
Well, I hope that's enough. So I'm really pleased with the way that came out. Not so much of a green wall at the moment, probably 80% black wall at the moment, but that will develop, and over the next few weeks those will bed in, and if I need to add a bit more then I can, or if I need to thin them out, it's really not difficult at all. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please check out the other ones on the channel, and please subscribe and go and have a look at our Patreon page where you can see extra videos and extra weekly content as well. So until next time, now's just the challenge of keeping them watered.